I'm Madison, I'm 26, and the day my parents kicked me out with nothing but a suitcase was the day everything changed. They said I was a failure for chasing my dream of designing jewelry. They told me to grow up and get a real job. So I left, heartbroken and homeless. But by the next morning, I was a millionaire. Turns out, my late grandmother's lottery numbers hit $29 million. And suddenly, I wasn't the disappointment anymore. You won't believe what I did next. Stick around, because this is one revenge story you don't want to miss. And don't forget to subscribe. Growing up, I was the type of kid parents brag about at dinner parties. Good grades. Clean room. Quiet. Polite. I lived to please, especially my dad. He worked as a corporate attorney, cold, calculating, always focused on what came next. My mom, a former teacher turned full-time homemaker, was more about appearances, clean clothes, nice friends, straight hair, big smiles. There was no room for failure, or creativity. Every choice I made was filtered through the question, what will people think? They thought I'd be a lawyer too. They said I had the brains and the look. They even bought me a leather briefcase for my 16th birthday. Seriously. But even then, I knew I was different. My escape was jewelry. It started with a shoebox under my bed filled with broken earrings and thrift store chains. I'd stay up late twisting wires and sketching designs in the margins of my homework. When I held a finished piece in my hands, I felt powerful. Like I could create something beautiful out of nothing. Of course, I never told them. Jewelry wasn't serious. It wasn't safe. It didn't come with a pension plan or office title. So, I played along. I went to college. I studied political science. I interned at a law firm. I smiled for the graduation photos. But my heart wasn't in it. Every time I walked into that office and sat behind a desk, I felt like I was wearing someone else's life. The final straw came on a Tuesday. I'd just come home from work, drained and miserable, and sat down at the kitchen table. My dad was reading the paper. My mom was on her tablet, browsing some home decor blog. I'm quitting, I said. The silence that followed was louder than a scream. I'm launching my own jewelry business, I continued. I've been saving up. I have customers already. There's a pop-up market next month. I can't do this anymore. Dad slowly folded his newspaper. You've lost your mind, he said. Mom looked at me like I'd just confessed to robbing a bank. You're throwing away everything we gave you for what? Trinkets? That's not a career, Madison, it's a phase. I tried to stay calm. I tried to explain the spreadsheets, the savings, the clients. They didn't care. That night, they gave me an ultimatum. Either you go back to work tomorrow, or you leave this house. I slept maybe 2 hours. By morning, I'd packed my life into a single suitcase. Some clothes. My tools. A small jewelry box my grandmother had left me when she passed. I didn't even have time to think about where I'd go, I just knew I couldn't stay. My dad watched from the hallway, arms crossed. My mom didn't even come downstairs. When I stepped outside, the air was cold and sharp. I stood on the front porch, staring out into nothing. For the first time in my life, I had no plan. No job. No home. Just a suitcase and a dream nobody believed in. I walked down the street and kept walking until I found a bus bench. I sat there for what felt like hours, too stunned to cry. I had no money for a motel. I had no friends I could crash with, not ones my parents hadn't already poisoned against me with their poor Madison is having a crisis routine. And then I remembered her. Grandma Ruth. She'd passed 2 years ago, but her old place was still standing. A tiny, dusty bungalow on the edge of town, left empty while my parents figured out what to do with it. It had been hers since the 60s, and she'd refused to let my dad sell it. Said it was full of memories. So I went there. The back window was still cracked from the time I broke it with a baseball. I slipped inside and dropped my suitcase on the dusty carpet. It smelled like mothballs and old books. But it was quiet. And it was mine, for now. I curled up on the couch, clutching her old jewelry box like it was a teddy bear, and cried until I fell asleep. The morning after I'd crashed at Grandma's house, I woke up to the sound of an old, crackling radio. I couldn't believe how peaceful it was, how different from the chaos I'd just left. It was like the world had slowed down, and all the noise had gone quiet. I was still trying to process everything that had happened. I had no job, no support, and nowhere to turn except for Grandma's house. I felt small and insignificant, like the universe had tossed me aside with the trash. I reached for the old lottery ticket Grandma had kept in a drawer. It was a strange habit of hers. Every week, she'd buy a ticket, and every week, she'd forget about it. It had been like a fun little game for her, and I never thought much of it. She'd always say, "If I win, I'll buy myself a new pair of shoes and maybe a new rocking chair. But I don't need much more." I pulled the ticket out of the drawer and stared at it. Then, just out of curiosity, I turned on the local news on the old TV set sitting on the corner of the room. The announcer's voice echoed through the tiny living room. "Tonight's lottery winner is a lucky ticket holder from this area, who will be receiving a whopping $29 million payout. If you've recently purchased a ticket from the Piggly Wiggly on 4th Avenue, check your numbers now." I blinked. The number they called was Grandma's. I looked at the ticket again, then back at the screen. My heart raced as I double-checked the numbers, comparing them one by one. I was too stunned to move. The numbers danced on the screen, as if mocking me. Was this some kind of sick joke? Could it be real? I pulled myself together and ran to the phone. I couldn't trust myself not to mess it up. I called the lottery office and waited for what felt like forever. When a representative finally picked up, I said the words I couldn't believe were leaving my mouth. "I think my grandmother's lottery ticket won. It's for $29 million. The voice on the other end didn't even flinch. "Yes, ma'am, you are the winner of the grand prize," they confirmed. I stared at the phone in shock. My hands shook as I processed the words. I was rich. We were rich. It felt like everything had changed in an instant. The life I thought I had was gone. The life I was about to begin was unimaginable. The first thing I did was sit down and work through my options. I could cash out the winnings right away, or I could take it as an annuity. I wasn't sure what to do. All I knew was that I had an opportunity now. A chance to build the future I'd always dreamed of. I reached out to a lawyer and financial advisor, and by the end of the week, everything was in place. The money was transferred, and I was officially a millionaire. But I didn't want to live the life my parents had always wanted for me. I didn't want to buy a fancy car or throw around money on things I didn't need. I knew what I wanted to do with my newfound wealth. I wanted to build the jewelry business I had always dreamed of. The next few months were a blur of designing, creating, and launching my own brand. I poured my heart into every piece, drawing inspiration from the lessons Grandma had taught me, from her quiet strength and simple elegance. I hired a team, found a space for a studio, and set up an online store. My brand was an instant hit. People loved the personal touch of every design. They could see the story behind each piece, how it had been carefully crafted by someone who understood the value of hard work and persistence. It wasn't long before I had more customers than I could handle. I was no longer just surviving. I was thriving. And then, one day, they called. I saw the number flash on my phone screen, Mom. I let it ring for a moment. My heart raced, a mix of anger and confusion. Why were they calling now? After everything that had happened? After they'd thrown me out of the house like I was nothing? I answered, keeping my voice calm. "Madison," my mom said, her voice strained. We heard about the lottery. We just wanted to say, we're proud of you." "Proud of me? Now? After everything?" I swallowed my frustration. "I'm glad you called," I said. "But I don't need your approval. I'm doing fine on my own. Actually, I'm better than fine." She paused, as if expecting me to say more. But I didn't. "I just wanted to let you know that we're sorry. We've been thinking about you." Thinking about me? They hadn't thought about me for years. The hypocrisy stung. "I've been doing great," I replied. "Actually, better than great. So, I'm going to need you to respect my boundaries now. I've moved on." And just like that, I set a boundary that I never thought I'd be able to. They had no place in my life anymore. But I wasn't done yet. With my newfound wealth, I didn't just want to get back at my parents. I didn't want to dwell in bitterness. Instead, I focused on something that mattered. I started a foundation in my grandmother's name, the Ruth Foundation for Creative Women. The foundation helped women like me, who dared to dream, who had been told they couldn't do it, who had been abandoned or discouraged. We provided grants for women starting their own businesses, offered mentorship, and helped them get their ideas off the ground. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about giving women the resources they needed to thrive.